For an entire generation, people have experienced Star Wars the only way it's been possible, on the TV screen. But if you've only seen it this way, you haven't seen it at all.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
We've been waiting for you.
Welcome to Coffee with Kenobi. Here are your hosts, Dan Z and Corey Clubb.
Hello, this is Corey Clubb, and welcome to show number 4 of Coffee with Kenobi, a brand new Star Wars podcast that analyzes our favorite saga in a whole new way. With me and my good friend and co-host, Dan Z.
Hello, everybody. This is a great time to be a Star Wars fan, and a great time to discuss all the latest happenings in Star Wars fandom. A special thanks to Justin at Jedi News UK for giving us credit for tweeting the scoop on Disney theme park rumblings from Disney insider Jim Hill. It brought a lot of traffic to our site and podcast, as well as bringing more conversation to our Facebook and Twitter feeds, and we really appreciate it.
In today's show, we're happy to introduce our very first guest on Coffee with Kenobi, Tricia Barr, writer and journalist for Del Rey's Suvudu Blog, Star Wars Insider Magazine, and our excellent Fangirl Blog. Tricia will join us for a cup of coffee as we discuss our topic for show number 4, the role of women in the Star Wars universe. It's a conversation not to be missed. We'll also have a cup of coffee with Mark Newbold, who is here to let everyone know about the Caravan of the Force. Mark is a co-news editor of Jedi News UK, writer for the Star Wars blog, Star Wars Insider, and StarWars.com. Very impressive resumes for our first 2 guests. We are unbelievably fortunate to have them on our show.
We will also look at news regarding the D23 Expo and Hollywood insider speculation, George Lucas receiving a major award, how to join the Star Wars action team, and we will introduce our topic for show number 5. And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
Hi there, it's Mark Newbold from JediNews.co.uk and the Star Wars Insider and the official Star Wars blog, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z and Corey Clubb. This is the podcast you're looking for.
Oh, wait. This is interesting.
You found something.
For our first news story, we want to talk about the Caravan of the Force. Rather than just hear Corey and myself talk about it, we thought it would be really cool to invite Mark Newbold, one of the organizers of the event, to come in and have a cup of coffee with us.
Insight serves you well.
We would like to welcome Mark Newbold as our special guest. Mark is the daily content manager of Jedi News, as well as a writer for Star Wars Insider and the official Star Wars blog. Mark has agreed to join Corey and me for a cup of coffee, and we are very excited to have him. Welcome, Mark.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Looking forward to chatting with you about all things Star Wars.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Corey and I, we were very excited. A couple of days ago, you sent out an email with a press release on a very exciting happening going on in the Caravan of the Force, and we thought this would be an excellent opportunity to help spread the word about this great cause. So please let us know about the Caravan of the Force.
Wow, where do we start? The Caravan, it's been something that we've been percolating. Yes, I used a coffee reference. Percolating for about, since I can tell you exactly when, actually, right at the end of Celebration 6, me and James, who do Jedi News, Matt Booker, who also is one of our regular contributors, and a guy called Paul Bateman, who used to do a lot of stuff with Ralph McQuarrie.
Oh, yeah.
And he's continuing to do stuff to this day. And Dan Curto, the collector Dan Curto.
Sure.
We're all sitting in the lobby, along with Paul's wife Athena, we're all sitting in the lobby, sort of coming down after C6, which was a great event. All ready to, for the big, especially for us Brits, for the big travel back home. And just started throwing ideas about the next event because we'd literally just heard that there was going to be another celebration. And for guys in the UK, Celebration Europe back in July of 2007 was a huge deal. It was an amazing event. It's where I first really sort of, even after being a fan for a long time and going to events and conventions, it really felt like the UK community really came together. And it was, so in that respect, it was a big deal. And people that we kind of, even in the UK, which is geographically a small country, but very, very heavily populated, there's guys that you'd be talking to that are really actually only an hour up the road, but you never get to meet them. Sure. Unless you happen to be lucky enough to bump into each other at conventions. So it was a great event for that. So with Celebration coming back to Europe and in Germany, which isn't that far for us, we started throwing ideas around about what to do. In all honesty, I can't remember who came up with the idea of doing like a road trip. I've got a feeling it was probably James because he's full of good ideas. But, you know, we just started throwing the ideas around. And, of course, within sort of half an hour of just chatting in this foyer waiting for the ride to the airport, you know, we just chucked out so many cool ideas, and many of them seem to, touch wood, by next week when we launch, will have come to fruition. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting. It's a long time coming, and it's nice that I can actually talk about it now because we've had to sit on this for so long.
Yeah, you said in the press release and in your email, you had mentioned this has been in the works since C6. And tell us kind of exactly how people can participate and what it all entails.
Sure. The whole idea is to travel from the UK. We launch on Friday, that's the 19th, at Brent Cross, which is where Toys R Us, one of the big Toys R Us stores near London, is situated. We're doing. We were going to do a Midnight Madness, but it's stepped back a few hours to just make it easier on people. Basically, it's a 7:30 launch now of the Black Series here in the UK. Yeah. So it's the 3 3/4 and the 6-inch line. So there's a lot of stuff that people won't have seen will be coming to this event for the first time. With that is and joining us on the journey, and I'll explain the 4 guys in a second. But joining us on the journey is Jeremy Bullock and Maureen, his wife. So they're going to be coming with us on the van.
Boba Fett himself, yeah.
Yeah, you'll be very safe with him.
Well, I don't know about that. I think we'll be safe with Maureen. Definitely safe with Maureen. But so very brave of her to agree to do that. So they will be there as well. So it'll be, you know, signing autographs, the Legion, the Garrison, all those guys, the R2 builders, they'll all be there.
Oh, wow.
We help Hasbro and Toys R Us launch this new line of product. And then from there, down to the coast on the next day, and then we hit the ferry. And over into France, and then journey through France, through Belgium, up into Holland, and across to Germany. So we're hoping to go to, and we don't want to give too much away, but we're hoping to go to some really cool places, some of which are just cool because they're cool. Some of them are cool because they're Star Wars, the names or the locations are kind of Star Wars related. So we've done a bit of research, and we've also been doing this quietly, because obviously Lucasfilm have had quite a bit of stuff to deal with this year as it is. Sure. And also they're participating and organising with Course of the Force over in the States. So there's a lot going on, but just quietly they've given us some really cool ideas, and we've sort of thrown these things around. So yeah, some of it's at their suggestion. Some of it, I won't be specific, but one of them's going to really hurt me specifically. You'll see more of that, I'm sure, within the next couple of weeks. But hurt good.
Yes. A good hurt, yeah.
When I get through it, I'll look back and go, I'm really glad I did that. But when I'm actually doing it, I'll think, do I really want to do this? So anyway, yeah. So we travel across to Germany, and then Celebration Europe 2, get it right, will be starting on the Friday. So hopefully we'll be there in about a day in advance. So yeah, it's going to be fun. But like I say, it's so nice to be able to talk about it.
Oh, it's great. And so it is going to be from the 19th of July through Monday, the 29th of July. It's all for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. How did you pick Make-A-Wish?
It's the preferred charity of Lucasfilm, but not only that. Yeah. Because we've done stuff in the past for cancer research, because most of the guys on the team have kind of had up close and personal sort of dealings with cancer. Sadly, my wife has had it and was fought it, and she's 4 years past it, and she's doing fantastically well.
God bless her.
But in the last 4 years, I've lost both my mum and my dad to it. So that's personal to me. But with Make-A-Wish, it fits. It's a beautiful charity anyway. And to me as well, this is a slight sideline, but I'm a massive wrestling fan, and I do know WWE's big charity is Make-A-Wish. Cool. And the amount of wishes that they hand out is quite, it's quite affecting actually how much they do. So to be able to do something for that is very nice. So that was the reason that Make-A-Wish was chosen. It just ticked a lot of boxes.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I like to ask, how can people get involved?
There is a Just Giving page, and I am going to bring the link up because I have got the brain of a sieve. I found it. Technology didn't beat me for once. It's www.justgiving.com/caravan-of-the-force. Lots of hyphens, but it all goes to a good cause.
That's right. We'll definitely put that in our show notes too. So
we definitely the show notes, and I know you and I have been having a nice conversation on Twitter about this, and on our webpage, www.coffeewithkenobi.com. It is the lead story. It is the main story. There are 3 or 4 different links in there to go ahead and contribute to the cause. So if you go to our website, you'll know exactly what to do to help out this incredibly important cause.
That's greatly appreciated. Thanks for that.
Very much. And real quickly, I know you're a busy guy. How did you get Jeremy Bullock involved?
Jeremy's a friend. Me and James as well, and Matt. Just to explain this, four Jedi News guys go, and myself, James, who's the originator and co-owner of Jedi News, Matt Booker, who's runs a comic shop over here called Automatic Comics, but anybody who's into collecting worldwide will have heard of Matt because he's been posting stuff left, right, and centre for years. And Dave Tree. Dave runs a shop called All the Cool Stuff here in the UK, but he also, if anybody went to Celebration Europe and visited the Palatoy archive, the vintage archive, that was Dave. So, and his team, who did a fantastic job. So it's a cool little bunch of guys. And Matt and James have known Jeremy for years. I've known him for quite a long time, and so has Dave. So he's a friend, and he's an easygoing guy, and he likes a bit of banter, so he likes to have a good laugh, which is why I think this trip should work really well. And Maureen is just the sweetest lady you can ever hope to meet. So I think it's going to be a really good mixture. And just to explain as well, there's not just one vehicle going from the UK. There's two. It's definitely good. So, so one vehicle will have, at any one time probably have 2 or 3 people in. The other vehicle will have the luggage. So we've called them Slave 1 and Slave 2.
Oh,
so, yeah. So that worked well.
Very good. Well, we love puns on the show, so there's nothing wrong with that. Is there going to be some sort of video documentary, or can we follow the trek on Jedi News UK?
Yeah, we're hoping so. We're getting all the kit sorted out at the moment because, as with these things, you can plan 10 years in advance. It never ever comes together until the week before. So this is what's happened here. We were waiting for the van, the companies who've loaned us the vans, Hyundai, thank you Hyundai, to come together, and all the other sponsors, Toys R Us and Vodafone and all these different people who've helped, Holiday Inn. I'm giving a shout out. Sounds like terrible. I'm giving shouts out to all these companies, but they've all helped to make it come to pass and come true and all that. So so we've got the 2 vehicles. We're filming it. I'm still getting my head around the fact that we're doing it. We are filming it. We've got 2 cameras, very nice, very cool cameras. So we've got the 2 cameras ready. We're going to be blogging whilst we're away. Some on Jedi News, some on the official blog. We will be doing articles for the Insider as well. Oh, so many things. And we're just going to take hundreds of pictures. So hopefully left, right and centre there will be, footage. And what we're going to try and do, because we've got Vodafone with us, they're kind of powering our trip in terms of being able to upload information to various sources. We should, fingers crossed, be able to, of an evening, get some stuff down so people can kind of see, well, today the guys were in, this place in Belgium, or the guys were in this place in Holland, and you should get a feel for what we're doing. Obviously, more detailed stuff will come later. But, we just want to keep people appraised of where we are. So that's the plan.
Well, not only is it fun and exciting, but you're also throwing in surprises. And, of course, Star Wars fans love surprises, or they should, because that's what kind of the quality of what makes this saga so exciting for us.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And we're hoping that, I'm hoping that some things happen that surprise us. It'd be
I'm sure there will be.
Yeah, I think so. It'd be a shame to do a big trip like this, and it is a big trip. And know every single element of it before you do it. There's always going to be crazy things happen. We're meeting, whilst we go over, we'll be liaising and meeting with the French, Belgian, Dutch and German garrisons. Very much looking forward to that. Not any more than anybody else, but I know that the Belgians are absolutely bonkers. So I'm really looking forward to meeting the crazy Belgians because they're known for it. So I'm looking forward to that, but very much looking forward to meeting the French, Dutch and German guys as well. So it's just going to be really cool. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Well, real quickly before you go, what we like to do, we have 5 little quick questions. They're just 1 word or 1 sentence answer, just to kind of get your thing for Star Wars. First one for you is, what is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Empire Strikes Back.
Good choice. That seems to be the prevailing vote around here.
It's very obvious, but yeah, it is.
Second question, favorite character?
Ooh, I'm going to be boring and say Han Solo.
That's not boring at all.
That's not boring. That's cool.
It feels too obvious, but I did and still do have done for 30 plus years fan fiction. And the character that I wrote the most about was a guy called Jan Lamona, and he was a smuggler. And when I was a kid, he was very much based on Han Solo, but has evolved to become his own thing. But I've never got away from that whole. I love the underworld, the smuggling stuff, all that. Shadows of the Empire was a great story because it was just all underneath. Yes. It wasn't just about the big story; it was just all underneath. So I love that aspect of Star Wars, and I hope they the powers that be, revisit and go to that sort of stuff, because I think there's a lot of cool stories to be told. So yes, Han Solo.
And today, as we're recording this, it's Harrison Ford's birthday, so that's pretty cool.
It certainly is, yeah. Happy birthday, Harrison. Cards in the post.
So the next question is your favorite line of dialogue or film moment?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to pick something really unusual. It's not a lot. There's no dialogue in it. There's a sequence in Empire where Luke has crashed his speeder, and he gets out and the speeder's crushed, and he shoots his grapple hook up to the underneath of the AT-AT and rappels up on that wire, and then gets his saber out, chucks the bomb in, drops to the floor, and the AT-AT explodes. There's just something about the editing, especially the music, that just really gets me excited every time I watch that sequence or hear the music. I can see the image. So even that's probably probably not the most amazing sequence in all of Star Wars. I'd say that one sequence is kind of stuck with me because I just think it's awesome, cool.
So if you collect, what is your favorite collectible that you own?
That's a good question. I do collect too much. Whilst we speak, me and my wife are living at the in-laws, her mum and dad's, because our house about 5 miles up the road is having a loft conversion specifically to put all my junk in it. So thank you, wife. Thank you, Ruth, for letting me do that. Really appreciate it. But yeah, if I had one specific piece I could pick, it would be back in '97. I was fortunate enough to meet Ralph McQuarrie at an event here in the UK called Memorabilia, which is held twice a year. It has been for about 20 years now. And he came, and I got to speak to him, and he signed I had a hardback first print of Art of Star Wars, and so Ralph signed that, which was wonderful. And I managed just to have a brief little chat, just a couple of minutes, no great secrets revealed. It was just a geeky little moment for me. This is before I'd been doing websites then for about 2 or 3 years, but the internet back in the mid-90s was not what it is today, obviously. So it was probably got 10 people and me watching that website, but it was just a really cool moment. So I think emotionally, there's a connection between that. And I always think, and Steve Sansweet, I'm certain, will tell you the same, that any collectible that you have that really means something to you, not just because, there's only 10 of these and I'm one of the 10 people that's got it or whatever. There's always a story. And Steve's collection, there's always a story. You know, he can do his tour 1,000,000 times, and you or me or the guy next door would go, tell me about that. And he'll tell you about that, but he'll tell you why it's here, where he got it, a little story. And so I think the things that are personal to you have that story connected. So I think that particular piece would be my pick because of that little story.
Very well said. Have you been to the ranch?
I haven't, but I'm going in November, so I'm very much looking forward to it.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, very much looking forward to it, yeah.
And last question for you. What particular messages or themes about the Star Wars saga resonate or speak to you?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
I would say the thing that always comes to mind, and it's one of the reasons why I think the Han Shot First issue became such a bugbear for people, was that in Star Wars you met Han, obviously, as I've said, my favourite character, who was a rogue and a ruffian, and he did whatever he needed to do to get through the day, really. I think it's been overplayed how amazing Han Solo is. I think Han was nothing without Chewbacca, certainly in those early days. But he goes from being the kind of guy that would shoot, Greedo under the table without thinking twice about it and being in it for the money, as he said himself, to halfway through Return of the Jedi, he's basically throwing the keys to the Falcon back to Lando, the guy that turned him into a coffee table the film before. And so that arc, that redemption is Han's story, but it's kind of also Anakin's story, so it's, there's parallels. Lucas loves his parallels. So I would say that redemption, it's never too late to put things right.
I've never thought of redemption in the lines of Han Solo. So thank you for, one of the things we love about this show is we want people to have fun. We want them to laugh and want them to think intelligently. And what you're bringing up is an intriguing way to look at it. Corey, I think you probably agree. Wouldn't it be fun to have Mark and Ed Dalston at the same time? We could talk about Han Solo versus Indiana Jones.
Oh, man, that'd be excellent. Excellent. I'd love to do that.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so very, very much for being our special guest today from Jedi News UK. Please go ahead and go to our website at coffeewithkenobi.com and and check out the Caravan of the Force and contribute to this very, very important and worthwhile cause. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
For our next story, we like to talk about a bit of a rumor, but we like to stick with the official news that would either come from Disney itself or Lucasfilm. And but here it's a little bit of a fan rumor. Online, they've been talking about a Star Wars land in Disney, Hollywood Studios, and they're talking about a lot of big things going on as far as some of the features they're going to have: a full-size AT-AT, a full-size Falcon. I mean, how awesome would it be to walk through the secret compartment that hid Han and Luke as stormtroopers came in, and walk around that and just feel like you're engrossed in those scenes.
The smuggler's compartment.
The smuggler's compartment, exactly.
Oh yeah, and this is awesome because here's how this happened. I listen to a lot of podcasts. We both do, and there's one called The Unofficial Guide Disney's Dish with Jim Hill. It's a Disney podcast where there's a guy named Jim Hill, and he's a huge Disney insider. He gets invited to everything. He has a lot of connections throughout the parks and throughout the corporation. So they had one episode. It's XLIV. And look, I teach English. I don't know what I know. Usually I know Roman numbers, but I don't know what XLIV is. But it's Star Wars Land Rumors for Disney's Hollywood Studios. Any idea what that is?
No, I'm trying to think of, was it X is 10 and
X is 10 and
L is
50.
50,
so
yes.
maybe it's 50.
60, 67?
Yeah, but they don't have that many episodes, so who knows?
Anyway.
Wow, this is quality podcasting. So the title of the podcast is Star Wars Land Rumors for Disney's Hollywood Studios. And here's the thing that he talked about, and Corey mentioned this already. There are basically 3 plans in place that they're debating back and forth. One of the plans features a full-size AT-AT. Now, the original Hollywood Studios used to be called Disney's MGM Studios. And if you've ever been to Star Tours, you know that there's a life-size AT-AT, but if you're underneath it or behind it, you can tell that it's a facade, because the purpose of the studios is to make it look like it is a movie studio and everything isn't real. But if this full-size AT-AT is the plan that they choose, it will be fully, completely built. And another option that they mentioned is a full-size Millennium Falcon, which would be that's my secret wish, just for the reasons that you talked about.
Well, I think also, too, I think the Falcon over the AT-AT would be great. It's huge, it's massive, and the story itself is just...
Look at the size of that thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. You'd sit in those cockpits, taking out TIE fighters, or,
we could finally understand the weird physics about how when they escape the Death Star and how Han is in one cannon and Luke is in another, and they seem to be looking at each other, but one's upside down, and it makes no sense.
They're in space. They're upside down all around. They don't know.
Exactly. Well, besides those 2 plans, there's a third plan, and basically all of those plans, they didn't really tell much about the third plan. Suffice it to say that there is a cantina restaurant bar that's going to be in all 3 of these plans. The major attraction, the calling card, would be the speeder bike ride. And actually, they talked about this a lot on the Force cast, and actually the Cantina cast, which we're going to talk about later in the show, they talked about it a lot as well. And here's the cool thing about this whole story. When I was listening to that podcast, I was doing some yard work, and I thought, oh, this is cool, listen to these ideas, even though we're not a huge rumor thing, as you mentioned earlier. So I Facebooked it on our Coffee with Kenobi page. Please go to that page and like it when you get a chance, of course. And then it went to our Twitter account. And next thing I know, Justin from Jedi News UK is posting and scooping that Coffee with Kenobi reports possible plans for a Star Wars theme park. And I texted Corey right away, and I said, oh my goodness, we're getting scooped like we are actually a news source. So that was really, really fun.
Even though I don't believe anything we say, we like our rumors, but, we don't try to...
Yeah, actually, I hate the rumors. No matter what, you have to understand we are experts in our own opinion, so...
Just like any fan, right?
Exactly. Our third story is actually Disney's plans for the D23 Expo. This is something I'm looking forward to as a Disney guy. They only have the Disney Expo, I believe, every 3 years. And of course, with Comic-Con, there's going to be a Star Wars presence, but it's not going to be very intense. This is a very exciting month to be a Star Wars fan because we've got Celebration Europe 2 in Germany. We've got the D23 Expo. There's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, a couple of the events are going to be, there's a Crash Course in the Force, Star Wars Saga 101. That'll be presented by Pablo Hidalgo at Stage 23, giving Star Wars newbies and experts alike.
Oh, a thorough grounding in all matters of the Star Wars legacy. I saw that. I saw that article. Basically, it's just going to be, they did this when Marvel first started, and this is something that they are going to use for people who are Disney people who may not know a lot about Star Wars or need a refresher course, if you will. I mean, all they need to do is subscribe to Coffee with Kenobi, but if they don't have time to do that because they're busy and on the go, this is something they can do. And there's also a Darth Vader evolution of a villain thing.
Yeah, that'll be showcase features in development for obviously the iconic villain of Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker, and he reaches all kinds of different genres and all kinds of different pop culture.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, he's an icon as far as film, and anybody knows who Darth Vader is, his voice, the breathing, and for them to be showcased in this event is absolutely excellent. And I'd love to go see that.
I think it would be so cool to see, not only to hear Pablo Hidalgo talk, because he's a Star Wars professor in his own right, but there's also a rumor on the Hollywood Reporter, and we're going to have a link to both of these articles in our show notes. A lot of the Hollywood insiders are reporting they think the original three of Fisher, Hamill, and Ford are going to show up and say, hey, we're in episode 7, and this is going to be the big reveal. I believe that they are saying that because when the Avengers was being made, all of the cast of the Avengers headed by Robert Downey Jr. came out, and I'm guessing that's where that came from, so chalk that up to major rumor as well, but that would be spectacular.
Our next story is about George Lucas receiving a National Medal of Arts award. He's presented this by President Obama himself. They got a little photo op going on there, and George is not in his trademark flannel shirt. He's wearing a nice crisp suit for the event. Looks nice.
Nicely trimmed beard.
No, I wish could have had like a plaid tie. I think that would have been nice.
But he, the clip they put in the program was George Lucas received his award for his contributions to American cinema. By combining the art of storytelling with boundless imagination and cutting-edge techniques, Mr. Lucas has transported us to new worlds and created some of the most beloved and iconic films of all time.
He's only got a couple awards under his belt as far as these go. I think he won one, was a couple weeks ago, he won another award.
Yeah, we talked about that in our last show. He won an NAACP Image Award for Red Tails, and then they won the Emmy for Season 5 of the Clone Wars. I'm really glad that Lucas is finally getting his due, particularly when if you listen to anything or read anything before November or October of last year, for 10 years, everybody thought he was the worst person who ever lived because of the Phantom Menace. So hopefully, it seems that finally people are letting that go and embracing the genius that is George Lucas, who gave us so many exciting things. We wouldn't be here talking about Star Wars or any of this stuff if not for George Lucas.
And his beard.
Han Solo, Rebel Soldier, Lando Calrissian, and Bespin Guard, each sold separately. From Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back Collection, new from Kenner.
Looking? Found someone you have, I would say, Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection.
In our collector's news segment this week, we're actually going to do it a little bit differently, and we're going to talk a lot about Star Wars books. Star Wars books have really been very popular for a long time. NPR has a great article that they borrowed from the Wall Street Journal, and they talked about Lucas books. They put out 60 to 70 titles a year.
Anybody that reads Star Wars stuff and the EU knows that there's a lot of material out there as far as the books, the comics, graphic novels, there's children's books, there's all kinds of different publications, and this stuff, the fans want this stuff. As we get closer and closer to Episode 7, we want more and more, and we want to know every little nugget that's going to come out, because to me and you, obviously as a fan, Dan, anything that's coming out pre-Episode 7 is always going to be some kind of a crystal ball into what is to come. I mean, we're looking at these books that are coming out. I think there's three or four titles that are adult books coming out, focusing on the big three, Han, Luke, and Leia. There's Darth Maul book coming out, Obi-Wan Kenobi book coming out. There's even, as we're talking about publications, there's the George Lucas having his original vision of what Star Wars was, called the Star Wars comic series. Yeah, there's going to be a link in the show notes about that too. That one actually is an 8-issue miniseries. It's based on the first draft of the New Hope script, and it's by J.W. Rinsler and Mike Mayhew. That one looks pretty cool. Was it like Han Solo's different color? He's like a wolf, or he's like a
something. We sound like we don't know what we're talking about. You know what? We didn't read it yet, and we're not Pablo Hidalgo, so we don't know. But check it out. It looks pretty cool. The Star Wars universe, as far as these expanded universe books go, covers 25,000 years and more than 200 novels, plus, like Corey mentioned, the children's book. But I love these Star Wars books, and I got to be honest, just doing this, it's making me kind of become a a little more of an EU guy. No, I'm not going to go crazy.
We have you now. Our next item for collector's news is a little bit about a Star Wars action team. You can go online and check this out. It's through Del Rey. Sign up through Facebook, Twitter, Google+, or LinkedIn. They've got a hodgepodge of just great little extras you guys can earn if you promote their stuff.
Would you say they have a plethora of things?
Hodgepodge.
A hodgepodge. Yeah, I think that is true. I mean, they have free bookmarks, posters, and basically the way that you earn this stuff, and you can get free books as well. They want you to do lift different things like take pictures of yourself in cosplay at conventions, advertise in their books, or write reviews and post things about them on Twitter and Facebook, and then you get points. And if you go to the link in the show notes, they show you how you can earn these points.
It looks great. I think it looks like a nice little fun community. Obviously, it's a great way to interact with other fans. It looks like a bunch of different people have gotten online here and signed up with this program. And of course, if you're at a convention, which there's tons coming up, take a picture of yourself, earn some credits, get some points, get free stuff. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. Plus, it's awesome because it promotes literacy. If you can combine Star Wars and literacy, there's the Star Wars Reads program as well, then you're onto something. Fiction can be fun.
I better get more points than you.
You might.
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
I must be allowed to speak.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
This is Tricia Barr from Fangirl Blog, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z and Corey Clubb. This is the podcast you are looking for.
Your insight serves you well.
Our topic for show number 4 is the role of female characters throughout the Star Wars saga. Are the women portrayed on an equal playing field with the males in the Star Wars universe? If so, what evidence can you provide from the films and or the Clone Wars? Remember, this isn't a question of if you like the characters, but more about their role in the galaxy. We would like to welcome our very first guest to Coffee with Kenobi, Tricia Barr from fangirlblog.com. Tricia has agreed to join Corey and me for a cup of coffee, and we are very excited to have her. Welcome, Tricia.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We are very excited to have you on the show. Corey and I have been, every week when we try to come up with different topics, Melinda, you read one of Melinda's emails, and she had suggested something about women in the Star Wars universe. That sounded like a really topical one, and especially considering what's been going on with suggestions and ideas about Episode 7, and apparently some sort of outrage from some of the fan community about the possibility of there being a female lead in Episode 7. What do you think about all that?
Well, I think there are people who are invested in the status quo. So it's sort of like when they've suggested a Superman maybe of a different race or Spider-Man. There are people who don't want it to change and think that even the skin color is part of the character. And so you could see how people would be invested in what they've seen from Star Wars, which is a white male lead. Yes. So far in the two trilogies. So I think it's people who just don't want it to change. They have certain expectations, and people sort of say things out of those expectations and not really thinking about what a character is. On the Force Cast the other night, one of the gentlemen who wrote in just said that people wouldn't be able to get in the movie theater and get behind a female lead. And I don't think that's really accurate. I think there's enough film out there now that proves that's not the case. And obviously women have been watching movies through the male lens of storytelling for a long time, and we've all been there. And I wanted to be Luke Skywalker at one point. So it's not like people can't go get into other gendered characters. It's about relating to them. And people think, well, I won't be able to relate to that person because the character's not like me. But that's usually not true.
Of course it's not. I love that you said that. And you brought up something earlier about kind of sexism comes into play. And sometimes I think when we're looking at these characters, I teach literature at the high school level, and I had an excellent professor who was very, very big on what what it means to be a feminist. And when I introduce that topic to my students, I say, are you a feminist? And I get a lot of blank stares, and they're not really sure what that means. And I say, being a feminist doesn't mean that you play softball and have a short haircut. Being a feminist means you believe in equal work for equal pay, and you don't take a gender role and make that all about what that person is, and you allow them to be a human being.
Tricia made a good point where you know, the roles in the Star Wars universe are mostly male. I think sometimes people forget, too, Luke Skywalker was originally supposed to be a girl.
That is true. And on the term feminist, it's interesting because even some women, including myself, were afraid to even say they were a feminist at one point. Even within the feminist community, which, you know, there are people who call themselves that, you know, there were expectations. You couldn't like pink because that was,
Right.
Yep.
you know, a girl's color. And so we've sort of seen a shift. I will call myself a feminist. I do call myself that now. But when I first started blogging, I was very wary of saying that. And I even, in my own mind, didn't want to think of myself as that because I thought that there were feminists who didn't want me because I, you know, wasn't afraid of dressing up or, you know, putting on a dress, looking cute, wearing makeup, wearing pink. I love all those things. But I think even within the feminist community, we're redefining what that means about accepting each other.
Definitely. And you brought up the idea that the best example when I talk about, you've probably read the novel Dracula many times. It's a great book to teach, especially when you look at sexism. It's full of sexist language. In fact, there's actually one line where Mina says she blames herself for doing something silly, and then she says, "Oh, it's probably still that taste of the apple in my mouth." So it's obviously something that people have been fighting, women have been fighting for a very long time. And I tell my students, you are a feminist. If you're not a feminist, you need to examine yourself because that's something to be proud of. It means you believe in equality. And Corey brought up the idea that Luke was supposed to be a female character at one point. And it would have been interesting to see how that was perceived in 1977 versus now, because when you look at someone like Joss Whedon, look how much he has done for females in this wonderful genre of geekdom that we love so well.
And look at what some of his favorite movies are. He's a big Star Wars fan.
Mm-hmm. He sure is.
It's somewhere he internalized something, you know, from these films that influenced him. I know his mom was a big influence on his life as well. But, you know, everything influences you. The movies you see, the television you watch, even what you read. So, you know, he ended up making he wanted to be a storyteller and he wanted to tell stories about women. That was sort of what he was able to relate to that.
Yeah. And you saw that portrayed beautifully through Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That, for my money, is still the best genre show of all time, portraying strong women able to do things, you know, rescuing men, not being damsels in distress. And he has that great quote where he says, I thought of the idea for Buffy because what if the blonde walking down the alley isn't the damsel in distress, but turns around and kicks the vampire's butt? Well,
and he also did a great job of, and through Firefly and even, you know, Avengers, he has a lot of different type of female characters.
Yes.
So there's not like a one note character. There's some that are feminine. There's Kaylee, who's a mechanic, you know, pushing them outside of the typical expectations. And so, especially Buffy, every character brings something different to the universe that he created. And so he's not afraid to tell different stories about different type of women, just like we see stories about different type of men a lot on the big screen.
Definitely. And he allows them, most importantly, to grow and to change and to be human, to have the foibles, to be allowed to be a human being, to make mistakes, not just to fall into these stereotypes that we're talking about. One of the things we wanted to ask you before we get into this, and it's probably a self-evident thing considering your impressive resume, Star Wars and all things fandom, but tell us about your role in Star Wars fandom.
I am a big bookie, and I started out in 1977. I saw the movie when I was 8, and I cosplayed Princess Leia that year. So
awesome.
I wasn't really one of those people that felt like I was an outsider. I'm an engineer. I went to engineering school, but I've always sort of done things my own way. I wanted to be like my dad. He was an engineer. My mom, you know, had a math major. So that was sort of our family was a little bit numbers oriented. And I was never discouraged for liking geeky things and just kind of grew with it. You know, the prequel trilogies came back and I'm like, oh, wow, we can do this again. And I started in the message boards. I wrote tons of fan fiction, and that was my community. I didn't really feel like there was a voice for women in the specific Star Wars literature community, 9 years ago. And about 4 years ago, I started thinking about how to find a voice. Then I started my blog. And now I write for Suvudu, which is Random House, which they own, Del Rey. That's their science fiction blog. So I write about Star Wars. I've just had an article in the Star Wars Insider 142 about about Padme. She got the cover for that. So I was very excited. And I blog about a lot of genre stuff. I've just sort of, fallen into that. I think I have a good voice. I see things from the perspective of a fan who's been in it a long time, and I understand sort of the history of how it's evolved.
Corey's a writer himself. He's got a book coming out. He's already had some things published, and you have some fan fiction that you're really, really done a great job with as well.
Yes, and I decided, about 4 years ago to jump into my own storytelling. So I've just finished the manuscript on my novel, which I'm really excited about. Star Wars sort of was the inspiration to get me into loving story. When I went to the movie theater, that was, I was sort of like, wow, you can imagine bigger possibilities. And it's reading Heir to the Empire. I was like, oh, and you could do it in a book. Even better, because I love books.
That's excellent. Now I got to ask, do you still dress up?
I'm not a cosplayer, but if you look on Fangirl Blog, there are some pictures of wonderful cosplayer Shay Standifer, who's also Celebration artist this year at Celebration Europe. She has a print. She let me use her Jaina Solo X-Wing costume at Celebration. So that was sort of like, one of those moments where it was really fun. Jaina is my favorite character. One of the first things I did with Suvudu was I pitched them doing a Valentine Celebrate the Romance of Star Wars type of article. And the first image that they did, they commissioned a piece of artwork for it. And it was actually Jaina Solo with Jagged Fell. It was a scene from Rebel Dream, their first kiss. So that was one of my first blogs I ever wrote for Suvudu. It was kind of fun. So I got to actually dress up in that costume, which is even more fun.
That's awesome. Great. That's great. When I was, years ago, I did the Disney World College program. So I'm very Disney biased. But one day I got to work at Endor Vendor before it expanded into Tatooine Traders. And I got to wear the orange X-Wing jumpsuit. I thought that was the greatest thing that ever happened. So I can only imagine how you felt with that incredible costume you got to wear.
The work she did on it is just, the costumers impressed me so much. And people think, they're just people that are dressing up, but they invest a lot of effort. And she even was coaching me like, this is how you have to stand. This is how you have to present yourself. There's a way Jaina would look. And, I thought that was really neat, and I watched cosplayers since then, and they definitely practice being the character, which is fun.
Yeah, it's an art form. It's a thing that people... I remember when I went to Celebration 3, before the Revenge of the Sith had even come out, I saw somebody with Anakin makeup on and the eyes. I thought, and the way he was walking around, I'd only known his behavior from the trailers at that point as far as how he'd be in Revenge of the Sith. But I thought, there's a lot to this. There's a lot going on here.
I think I know the guy you're talking about. He kept everybody taking pictures. I don't know him personally, but I was at that convention, and I think his name is Dan. I think they called him Danikin, if I remember correctly.
Well, it wasn't me, I can tell you that.
I'm pretty sure I have a picture with him, but he was very impressive in the costume.
And he had those FX lightsabers when they had just come out, and that seemed like the greatest thing of all time. Awesome. Well, you mentioned a lot about literacy, which I think, of course, is a great thing. Corey being an author, myself being an educator, and you got to write for Star Wars Insider. Can you tell us really quickly how that happened? That must have been the thrill of a lifetime.
Yeah, I did. I got a chance to, when I was writing for Suvudu, Frank Parisi was the editor at Star Wars Insider, and now he's an editor at Del Rey. And they work very closely with each other for these articles. So he sent me an email one day and said, would you like to interview Aaron Alston for Mercy Kill? And I happened to be riding my horse, who is named after a Star Wars character, Ganner.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And so I almost fell off my horse. And that is a true story when I read the email. So, and there's, don't read your emails while you're riding a horse.
I was going to say, were you texting and riding? Were you?
Yeah.
Well, I sometimes I work full time. So sometimes I'm taking off to go ride, but I still need to cover clients. So, I was checking my email, not thinking I'd get a, fangirl email. And so I interviewed Aaron Alston, and that went really well. Then I got to interview Timothy Zahn for Scoundrels.
Awesome.
And then the Disney news broke, and I pitched a couple other articles. Then Jonathan Wilkins said, hey, can you write something on Padme? And we kind of want to do some prequel trilogy stuff. And he sort of left it really wide open, and it took me a while to come around to Padme. And I'm a fan of hers. I think she could have gotten more love as a character in the prequel trilogy. It's just that her story sort of got lost in the telling of Anakin's. But I think people don't give her enough credit, and that she deserves. Probably, she lost the will to live is taken very literally. I discussed that in the article, and the kind of the supernatural elements of the show, which come back. It's interesting that they brought the supernatural elements back very heavily in the Clone Wars, because there was always sort of a whimsy in the original trilogy, and yes. I think there's a cost to Anakin not allowing himself to die. He should have died, and we see that in Darth Maul later in the Clone Wars, that you can actually hold on, that they can use the dark side to hold on to life. And there's a cost for that, though. And for Anakin, every time the scene comes up with Padme's ruminations in Revenge of the Sith, where they're looking across the distance of Coruscant right before he runs and stops Mace Windu, yes. I always felt that music just was saying something else, that there was something else going on. And in the novelization by Matt Stover, he sort of dives into that. Padme dies as Anakin is reborn as Darth Vader. And I think there's some sort of karma there. You see it. I was watching Once Upon a Time. That sort of inspired me too to write this article, because I can't remember what the story was, but someone had chosen something. They tried to, keep a life, and there was a cost of another life. And I was like, I think that's stronger in the movie. And it came off. They couldn't have Anakin be irredeemable, so he couldn't be like Anakin physically killed her, right? But because then it wouldn't work in the original trilogy. Luke redeeming him, because he's just like, I don't know. It's weird because people have this. They're like, well, if he's that bad that he whomped on his wife, that she died. So there's sort of this emotional. You have to protect Anakin in some way to be redeemable. I really love Padme, and I think the moral of her story is that not every hero wins. But she does win in the end. Lucas did a wonderful job of mirroring that in the prequel trilogy. She says there's still good in him, and Luke says that to Leia before he goes and lays down his weapon.
Yeah, I'm interested that you say that Padme still wins, and can you tell me a little bit more about why you say that? Because she seems to get a lot of criticism, probably a lot more than Leia does, and I'm going to chalk that up to the original trilogy bias that, we're all sort of a victim of in many ways. Well, tell me why you think she wins.
Her faith in Anakin is restored. I think that, to me, Phantom Menace's problem was we didn't have original trilogy people when we went in to see the Phantom Menace. I don't know if you remember the original trailers for the Phantom Menace. It was the Gungans on the creatures. I can't remember, walking out of the fog. Mm-hmm. And you were sort of like, what is this movie? And then when you saw it, you didn't have you were expecting it to be like the original trilogy, and it wasn't. Right. So one of the I actually like the Phantom Menace more now, because I think as I talked about fans, people saying, I don't want a woman because of their expectation. I think original trilogy fans, it the Phantom Menace wasn't what they expected. But that was because I think they didn't do a good job of telling people what they were going to give them. They were trying to hide the ball and a little bit. And so when people build up their own expectations, something happens. So Padme was a great character in the Phantom Menace, but it was one of those movies that people were like, oh, that really stunk. And it didn't. It just wasn't what people expected. And then obviously in the second movie, you have the love story. And I think that one of the weaknesses of the prequel trilogy was that Lucas did it on his own. And if you read about Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, as a matter of fact, I just saw a great article. It was an interview with Carrie Fisher from 1983. They really played a part in developing the dialogue even for the characters during Empire Strikes Back. They developed themselves a lot of it. And, there were screenwriters, but, George Lucas was screenwriting and directing. And so the love story was kind of a little awkward in Attack of the Clones. And I don't think Padme came off not quite how he hoped she would come off. How we hoped she would come off. When I was in the fanfic community, Padme was the bomb. I mean, they thought she was so strong and so awesome. And they were writing these stories, and when Revenge of the Sith came out, they're like, wait, what happened? People were writing tragedies, but they still somehow saw Padme as much more a part of it, fighting. But she's pregnant, and I think there was this, well, we can't have a pregnant woman. She was stuck in, this political realm. And I've heard people say that she comes off as stupid or naive. And I don't think she was either. I think she was an optimist, and she kept thinking that people would do the right thing. And she thought that all we had to do is defeat Newt Gunray. If you can topple one person, you'll fix it. And I think she was always thinking that Anakin and the Jedi who had helped save Naboo were going to be the good people in this. And she had faith in Anakin. And it's not a bad thing to have a character who has faith in people. People see that as a weakness. It is a weakness because she lost, but it's also an incredible strength to have that much faith in people.
I think there's also a habit too. And it's almost like when we're sitting here listening to you talk about this and theorize on this, I feel like I'm listening to a podcast right now. I could just sit and listen to you talk about this because you clearly know what you're talking about. So we definitely have the right person as our guest for our first cup of coffee. So thank you again for being on the show. I think the interesting thing about people, when they look at female characters, there tends to be this sort of strange tendency to think that as a character falls in love and has children, that they become diluted or watered down. And women are much stronger than men. Let's be honest. Today is the 1 month birthday of our little boy, Mason. And seeing what my wife went through to have a child is unbelievable. The strength that is taken there. And I agree with you when you're talking about Padme. She appears maybe on the surface to be stronger at the beginning, but to say, as you said, that she'd be naive or stupid is really kind of silly, because when you love someone, you put your trust in them, and you see, it's almost like when you love someone, it's a paint by numbers thing. Even if you don't have all the markers to color in all of the numbers, you pretend like you have them anyway because you want to see the best in that person, and that's what she does with Anakin.
I'd like to put in there also, you said Shmi, his mother, was also strong too, to let him go off and run around the Jedi and go into space. That's got to be difficult as well, to let your only son just do that and for you to stay behind.
Well, that leads us actually to Troy Metzler. Troy sent us an email, and Tricia was kind enough to read these emails that we received, and she actually raved about him on Twitter, which is really, really cool. He talks about the fact that Shmi was a strong single mother that never let her struggle affect her son. He talks about his struggle was his own, not inherent. Padme and Leia were powerful leaders held in high regard. He talks about Mon Mothma, and then he says he makes up the name Femineros to talk about women idolizing these strong characters. And Shmi is an interesting character. Very cool that the actress, was it Pernilla August? Is that the name of the actress?
Yes.
She came back and voiced Shmi for that amazing Mortis trilogy. How do you view her role in the Star Wars universe as a character?
Well, again, I think she had faith in Anakin to find his way. So, and it's true. I read Troy's email, and I was like, he just said, he summed her up so well, that she was a mother by herself. And yet her child was this extreme, he was in a horrible situation. He was a slave, except he was willing to help people. He wasn't dejected about his life. He had friends. And so that makes a statement about what she did for him. And I couldn't imagine just letting my child go, but knowing that would be the best thing, because it really wasn't going to get any better for him as a slave. So that takes a great bit of courage. Again, where it's from the Phantom Menace. So sometimes you think maybe that the characters in there get a little under-recognized for there was some strong thought into the characters as they were developed, definitely, for that movie.
Like you said, Tricia, too, like they're almost like you said for about Padme in the Phantom Menace, they're almost kind of, there's so much story there we don't see, and I wish we did. And like you said, there's so much, like even for fan fiction and stuff like that, for people to go in there and dig that up a little bit and harvest that as far as, what was their role in that, in the background there. I can't help it whenever I see Shmi and Qui-Gon together, they kind of have a connection a little bit, I think.
They do.
Well, Qui-Gon, he always struck me as the player. I don't
It's the beard. It's the beard.
I just thought maybe his compassion, was spread around. But have you guys read Darth Plagueis, the novel?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, we have.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
I did a series with the editor on Fangirl, and I met him through fanfic. He was a big Anakin Padme fan, and he wrote their stuff, and he started reading, he wasn't reading the NJO, and he started reading my fan fiction, and then he got into the characters, and then he bought all the books and caught up. And he always thought that there was, he would always say Padme, he thought she was the best, strongest character. And we did a series where we were really proponents that they could do a Plagueis type novel where they really get into Padme, because a lot of her strength is internal. You won't see it played out because she doesn't have a lightsaber. She isn't fighting the demons with a sword. She's sort of fighting them with an internal strength. So I think there's a fantastic novel idea in giving Padme, a book that could kind of get in her head and get into some of the people like political thrillers. Yeah. I think you could give her a victory within the scheme of the wars that would show her as it's not that she wasn't politically savvy. She just got outplayed by a Sith Lord.
Yes. Who outplayed the entire galaxy.
Who outplayed the Jedi Order. Yeah. So, it's like saying, well, so-and-so went to the Super Bowl and they, got beat. Well, they still were better than every other team in their league. So, I think she's, Super Bowl caliber in the political arena, but she was, up against, and especially if you read Plagueis, then you're like, wow, these dudes are just, they've been working this stuff, their angles for a while.
They redefine what patience means. I like your little Super Bowl analogy too, because what is she, 12 when she's the queen on Naboo? And then the fact that in the political world, she holds her own. People are always looking to her to represent them. And in this male-dominated society, stop me if you've heard this before, she stands out as a leader, as a role model, and she never compromises her values, no matter what kind of pressure she faces.
Well, yeah, and that's why I think, I think she's a good character to talk about, what is strong and what is weak and how that comes off in the audience. I personally think that the books were really running on developing male and female characters through the NJO. And when the third movie, Revenge of the Sith, came out, and there was sort of a little bit of backlash on Padme because people didn't understand her, I really think they backed off of there was a little bit of, that's not going to work so well, the female characters. I don't think it's conscious. I think it's sort of like that didn't really work. And you can see as the NJO proceeds, Jaina finishes an arc, her kind of heroine's journey in Destiny Way, and then it becomes all about Jason after that through the rest of the NJO. And instead of having them have parallel arcs in NJO. She gets conked on the head in the final big battle, and Jason and Luke save the day. So
it's like Bilbo at the end of The Hobbit.
Well, and the funny thing is, in the original trilogy, it took all three of them to save the day. Really, right? They all, they rescued Princess Leia, but then they got in the hall, and she's like, "Dude, you don't have a plan." So, if it had been the two of them, and she hadn't, whipped the blaster off of Luke. So there's always this dynamic of everybody's working together. So it was kind of like, oh, okay, we're running all the way up to then. Oh, darn, Jaina got conked on the head. And
yeah, that's sort of a Star Wars thing, isn't it? In the third movie, as they move along in the stories, the female characters sometimes fall back. Look at Ayla Secura. She had lines in Revenge of the Sith, and those were edited out. And actually, that's sort of maybe a good little place to. Let me ask you about, people sometimes say to me when I talk about female characters in the Star Wars universe, Ayla Secura and Aurra Sing. They're both powerful. Allegedly, they have weapons, they have imposing figures, but they're only put in that position of power, and they're half dressed. To me, that's a huge problem. And then talk about feminism. When you take away voice, now I don't think that George Lucas is sexist by any stretch of the imagination. There's no evidence of sexist language or behavior in any kind in any of the movies or any of the outlines that I've ever seen. But the fact that they're portrayed like that bothers me.
Well, again, Leia, was, very kind of, the white dress and not a lot of skin showing. And then obviously we have the slave Leia. I'm not, the slave Leia doesn't really bother me because I think Leia shows that, that's a visible stripping of her into making her a vulnerable character, except she never gives up her vulnerability. And anybody I have ever talked to cosplays the character takes that moment of Leia strangling Jabba, and that's what they take out of the character. So, right. But the prequel trilogies definitely got a little bit into the male gaze. Like there was no reason, Padme, for instance, walking into the arena, and the two Jedi are worried about each other. They're having this, ooh, shame on you for coming, little banter. Meanwhile, Padme's in the back. Come on, George Lucas made a story where she whips the hairpin out. She's picking the lock. She climbs up the, the big phallic symbol in the arena, essentially, and saves herself. But she climbs up, and they're like, "Oh, what about her?" And Obi-Wan's like, "Oh, I think she's on top of things." And so,
funny,
yeah, witty.
But anyways, so she saves herself essentially.
But the problem with that, though, she's still half dressed.
Half dressed, yeah.
But that's the moment where I went, oh, because she isn't half dressed until she gets on top of it, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. Let's
sex it up."
Exactly. And I think she's
hurt. She's hurt too, though. She's got she's a big scratch on her back, but
it was just a moment, I think, where they're like, "Oh, this will be really cool," and they didn't think of sort of the ramifications of what that was. That's what I think. I think that I would, if I don't, this is why I like to have, I think there should be more people in the storytelling process. A prequel trilogies had less people in the storytelling process.
Absolutely.
There's always somebody to question when you think, oh, that's a really good idea. And if you put a woman in the room, I think that a woman would have said, do you think, is it necessary to the story? Do you need it in the story? Is she not sexy enough in the outfit?
Yes, exactly. And of course, embrace your femininity, but it doesn't have to be about that. Just like you said, isn't she sexy enough for being who she is and rescuing these two Jedis?
Exactly. And so, but in Ayla Secura and Aurra Sing, I liked, George Lucas was inspired by the visuals of the comics. And I think that was Jan Duursema who drew.
Yes, that is correct.
Mm-hmm. And I love her and John Ostrander's comics, and what they really do is they're good about the characters, and she draws everything beautiful. So it's not like she doesn't draw just women, as she, everything in her style is sort of beautiful and almost a little bit hypersexualized, and they're very attractive. She likes things to be beautiful, but the men are too. And I think George Lucas was inspired by that look. And there's actually nothing wrong if a woman wants to walk around,
Definitely.
but that's all if that's all you end up representing, I mean, Star Trek Into Darkness, you know, Carol Mark is supposed to be a tough character, and then, you know, oh, I'm standing here in my bra, and
yes, for no reason.
And the funny thing is, we're having this dialogue in the national conversation about women in the military getting, you know, being harassed, and James Kirk is supposed to be a hero, and he's shown really as a captain in an improper. He should have been court-martialed. By the way, we're talking about standards in America. And at the same time, the movie and Bad Robot is partnering with the veterans group to promote our heroes of the war. And I'm thinking, well, but what's the message you're saying when Kirk has to, you know, turn around and he doesn't pay attention to this character? So I think we have to be careful with the visuals. And I'm a big Abrams fan. I think he writes great women, but I think that visual was, I don't think there was a woman in the room who said, you know, I really don't think you should do that.
No, we spoke about that. We spoke about that in our Star Trek review. And my thought process here is, I kind of thought not necessarily didn't need that scene, but I think for her as a character, she needed to grasp Kirk's attention. And obviously he's a playboy, you know, to get his attention. Obviously, you know, just the clothes come off and all of a sudden there you whipping around going, oh yeah, I didn't, you know, turn around. But, you know, her as a person needed to get him on her side. So I think that was
like disarming him. Sort of.
Sure. Yeah. Disarming him.
I could
the
see,
lowest level.
I could see they might think that as a, but I still don't think it works.
No, it doesn't.
You have to go with the gut. I mean, I only bring this up because one of the things that I worry about is I love Star Trek too. And the women running around in the little short skirts, I know it's an homage to the
60s,
but essentially that's not a practical uniform for anyone in the military.
And neither is Wonder Woman's, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a whole other podcast.
Superman has his underoos, so
yeah. Well, he used to. Well, yeah, exactly.
But I would hope that when they consider the costumes that they do consider that maybe giving an homage. I mean, the Hunger Games, Katniss is never, you know, except for when she's in the moments where they're making a statement, when they beautify her up and put her on the stage. Yeah. She's most of the movie, she's in fighting trim and in an outfit. And I've seen plenty of men comment, wow, you know, she's hot. And and all the imagery is pictures of her, you know, with sweat and a bow and arrow, and she's dirty.
Earth tone.
I would hope that they don't necessarily go back to those costume designs. I would like to see Jedi in practical, you know, there's a big argument about the Mara cat suit. Mm-hmm. People don't like it. A lot of the imagery is her in a cat suit. And I think Mara would wear some type of form-fitting uniform. But I mean, this woman's a warrior. She's going to have knives and utility belts and, you know, she's got a gizmo. And yeah, you're probably not, if you're running around in stealth, this is always one of my big things. I hate when they show women Jedi with their hair down. And it's just a huge sticking point because let me tell you, if you're running around whipping around with your hair down trying to defend yourself, you're going to die because you don't see what happens.
Sure. It's like Superman wearing a cape. The great thing in The Incredibles where that superhero has the cape and he gets sucked into the jet propeller.
Qui-Gon's hair's pulled back. Why wouldn't a woman's hair be pulled
good
back?
Point.
Yeah, good point.
So it doesn't make any sense from a practical standpoint. If you have to pull the man's hair back out of his eyes so he could fight and defeat Darth Maul, why would a woman be running around with their hair spinning out? It's, you know, it's going back to, well, you know, we want the character to look beautiful. Well, you know what? It's redefined beautiful. But, you know, she's kicking butt. I mean, so Ventress has no hair, so for good reason, probably gets in the way.
I was actually thinking about her when she's first in the Clone Wars. You talked about how, for me, the Clone Wars has made the prequels a million times better because it fleshed out all these characters and made them more whole and full of substance. But when the Clone Wars starts, she has this big flowing skirt on it, and as she evolves and kind of turns into a good guy, she becomes a little more less feminized as far as her appearance, but no less powerful. How do you analyze her character when it comes to things like that? Because clothing is so big. In fact, real quickly, last night I was introducing my wife to The Empire Strikes Back for the first time, which was really great, especially hearing the questions she had and things like that. But did you notice that in A New Hope and in The Empire Strikes Back, Leia only wears white until they come out of the space slug. And the next time she changes, she gets out of that purity, that white, the wedding dress, if you will. And now she's wearing the dark Bespin clothing. Then Han is frozen in carbonite, and she goes back to the white. She goes back to her purity, her virginity until
absolutely.
She
I wrote a blog on the color symbolism, and
cool.
Literature guy, you would pick up on that.
Absolutely.
So, my position is Han and Leia. That's the imagery that they've embarked on their relationship. So that is the kind of she's not a virgin anymore. And she goes back in the white when her dad, Darth Vader, comes back into the picture. So she also, her braids are down and looser. And then after she's back in the white, her braids stay down. That's a loosening of of her. It's imagery of her hair is tight up on her head, and then after the red outfit, her hair stays down in the lower braids. I think that's a visual to people that she stays in that. And I know it was ad-libbed that Harrison Ford blurt out the "I know," but it works because I think that Han had already told her that. And
interesting.
Leia was just going, I can't let him go away, because she was too afraid to invest in him. So I think that moment when she said, it works. I know it's ad lib, but it works. If she says, I love you, he says, I know. It's not that he's denying her the statement. I think he's already said, he's been chasing her actively through the whole movie.
Yes.
And then you see them in the room, very intimate and close up and talking to each other. It's a very much a comfortable position. Like, maybe we've been like this with our clothes off, so it doesn't matter that we're this close.
And that's the great thing about Star Wars, too, being able to paint kind of pictures behind the scenes that aren't shown.
And if you're ready for it as an adult, you could see it. And if you're a kid, it would just go right by you, which is perfect, which is what I like about Star Wars. You can take that out of it. Mm-hmm. But I always think he had already said it. And
see, and being the good Catholic boy that I am, I still would like to think that until Return of the Jedi, he hasn't done or said anything. That there's been a kiss and who knows what else. But I tend to think that once he comes out of that carbonite, that part of him thaws out. And actually, I was going through this whole thing to Deanna last night about how Han Solo, he can't get the Falcon to work, and it's kind of like a bit of a Falcon thing about his equipment not being able to function until he goes through this baptism, this cleansing. He comes out of it and all of his equipment works properly. And she said, "Oh, no wonder you like Star Wars. You're making it phallic." I'm like, no, it makes sense. It makes sense. I wish we did a commentary on that last night. Anyway, I guess I should probably get to these emails because we've got some great ones.
We've got through a couple of them here.
Yeah, we kind of have. I want to point out what Joe, I think it's Bucher. I apologize, Joe, if I'm not saying your last name correctly. One of the things he says I was really impressed with, if I was grading this paper, I'd give it an A. The pitfall many epic series fall into is that even when women are portrayed as strong, they tend to always need the male character to rescue them in some fashion. Alternatively, another female characterization that can turn some viewers off is the portrayal of the heroine as manlike. Doing things like male heroes are portrayed, stupid feats of strength, insane fistfights, etc., is most interesting and fitting when the female lead character is still distinctly feminine and succeeds. And maybe that ties into the whole thing with Asajj Ventress.
Well, Dan, also, quick comment. You always see females, if they're close to a lead or the leading character, they always fight other females. They never fight the male.
Until she comes along.
Right.
No, it's, I think people definitely struggle with finding the balance. Mm-hmm. And that's I think a character can be definitely, that's one of the reasons I like Ventress is she's sort of, she's complicated in that, we don't not really sure, she had a kind of a bad life and she ended up, being part of the Sith, and then now she's sort of realizing she finds a new family, then loses that family with the Night Sisters. And now she's sort of redefining who she is. But she's always been sort of this kind of raw, savage, feminine character. I mean, she kisses the clone before she, the removed scene from the show. But when you see that footage, it's sort of like, that's totally her. I can see why they tried to slip, to get that through. But remember a lot of the influence that people saw strong characters were Ripley, who essentially was designed as a genderless character.
True.
And then also Linda Hamilton in The Terminator. When she came out in that I think those characters are very awesome, but at the same time, there's been sort of a denial of that you could be feminine, and you either had to be masculine-like to go in the heroic role, or you just couldn't be that. And so, people have struggled with that, which is one of the reasons Buffy was sort of she was a cheerleader, and they didn't walk away from that, any of those issues. They were part of her character.
Yeah, they were a part of who she was. And that's the thing about feminism that people, it drives me nuts when people are talking about having female characters in episode 7. The problem lies in not if a female character is a lead or not a lead or what their role is. The problem is you saying they can't do that because this is how it's always been. Well, what is it? The 14th Amendment? That kind of changed some things around. You're allowed to be who you are and to embrace every side of you. And you mentioned earlier, Tricia, about, a woman can dress up and be beautiful if she wants, or she can wear earth tones and pull her hair back and whatever she needs to do. We don't get to decide. That is not something we get to decide. The person that we're talking about, it's their choice, and embracing who they are makes them the characters that are strong.
Well, and that's really ties into this topic of agency for characters, because a lot of times the female characters don't have agency in their stories. And so if you want to choose to dress feminine and that's how you want to be, then, or if you want to not brush your hair, not wear makeup, that's your choice too. A lot of times women don't get that choice. And I've always said that there's been this huge uproar about, well, if Jaina marries Jag in the expanded universe and the Imperial Knights means that that means that she's going to bear the Imperial, they called her the Womb of Destiny was her nickname at one point. And the problem isn't that, Ben Skywalker is now, based, if you were to say the Legacy comics give him a destiny too, he is going to have kids too. They're going to be Jedi kids. So he's, the father of the Jedi essentially. So, but the problem is that people think that Jaina doesn't have, I think that if she had more agency as a character, they wouldn't see her as just becoming a Womb of Destiny.
And so it's safe to say you're an EU person.
Oh, huge EU person. So yes. But that's how I perceive the problem comes about is when people think a female character doesn't have agency in what happens, that's when they struggle with her, which is one of the reasons Mara Jade worked for most of the EU. She was, had agency in her story. I thought that, starting in Dark Nest, she started to just follow Luke around and she stopped being the critic of him, which I think is one of the reasons he loved her, is that she didn't just accept his farm boyisms and challenged him to think a little bit more about stuff. And that's why they worked well. And when she stopped challenging him, a lot of people, especially Mara fans, didn't like that because it wasn't Mara to just go, okay, we'll do whatever Luke wants to do. If you want to talk about, have you seen Man of Steel?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
That Lois Lane is established as, Pulitzer Prize winner. They give her all these creds at the beginning as being a strong character, except she loses all her agency. But when she goes up in the ship, Jor-El tells her to move her head aside to, here's how you're going to save the day. Get in that thing. And instead of Lois Lane figuring out how to save the day,
like she has for 75 years.
Well, and that's why she works. Superman is really strong, but he's a little bit naive, and he's a little bit of a farm boy too. And she's kind of wise to the world and very smart. And so when Superman might have gotten in trouble, reason she worked is because she could choose to not tell about something about him or keep it from the paper or, cover something up or get the computer and figure out something to help Superman. So that's how she worked so well with the character.
And not to mention the fact that throughout her entire history, she was constantly being told by men what she could and couldn't do, and she still finds a way to make it happen. Whereas you point out, Jor-El tells her what to do, and she just, he's helping, but still.
That whole second act, she has no agency in it. It's all about her becoming a plot device to help save the day at the end. And
that's just poor storytelling.
It is poor storytelling.
Well, compare it to the Avengers, where we introduce see Black Widow as tough. She's obviously doesn't have a lot of agency in the moment when she's tied up. But that happens. Everybody gets in a bad situation, but she gets out of it. And the moment that she helps save the day with Loki, when you come into the scene, you think he's using her, that she becomes vulnerable and he kind of digs into her emotions. But then you realize that really she chose to let herself show those emotions. It was completely an act of her own will to become that vulnerable in order to get Loki to give up his secret.
It's complete agency.
Yes. So,
Corey, do you think we have the right guest for this topic?
Yeah, I'm in awe. I'm kind of just like glazed over just listening. This is awesome.
I was afraid you took cough medicine. I wasn't sure what was going on with you.
No, I'm good. No,
I'm sorry. I'm just like,
this is
excellent.
It's like sitting in a master class about agency in Star Wars. That's what we want.
I think about this a lot because when I was writing my story, it was always about how do you get it so everybody's working together. Well, not every moment you're going to be able to save the day. So how do you and I thought that Avengers, I kept thinking about the story and how it just worked, that every character helped pick up every other character's actions. And I think Star Wars really started it's not just a hero's journey, it's a team's journey. And I think we're seeing storytelling evolve. And Avengers was the first proof that you could do it and have all sorts of heroes.
Well, again, Joss Whedon too.
Well, and I think his brain is at a different level, but when I started looking at stories that I wanted to emulate as far as making it work, I kept seeing everything that was drawing me in was teamwork. And Iron Man 3 exceeded expectations. And again, about teamwork in the movie. It was more than just Iron Man in it, and it blew the box office away. I think the more characters that you can get into the story, the more people are going to be invested because everybody's drawn to different characters.
Well, didn't it drive you nuts, though, that the most times when Gwyneth Paltrow was powerful, she had to wear a tank top and only half the armor? I can't let that go. I mean, that's a serious thing.
That's Hollywood for you. So
I know it's sad.
Hopefully, Hollywood will recognize that.
Well, they certainly have for the Hunger Games.
Well, I was going to say, Tricia, you brought up a good point where you had Hunger Games, and not that I'm a big fan of the Twilight series, but they had she was the lead in the Twilight series as far as I can't think of her name. Bella, is it Bella?
Bella, yes.
Bella.
And, I'm not a big
started.
Well, but still, it is somebody to root for.
Yes,
in that genre.
Yes,
so.
Exactly. That's exactly the point from Twilight. You have to you still have to look at what made it successful, and that was that there were a lot of different angles for people to become part of it. And what I take away from Twilight is that people want escapism, and Twilight just buys into that. It's beautiful visually, and it's just cheesy, and it goes with it. And so you have to sort of, just understand take away from it, what drew people to it.
I have to read this quote by Stephen King. Harry Potter is about confronting fears, finding inner strength, and doing what is right in the face of adversity. Twilight is about how important it is to have a boyfriend. Stephen King. Anyway, we don't want everyone will unsubscribe if we keep talking about Twilight, so we better move on from that. I want to point out Melinda, our friend Melinda Wolf, as usual, of course, talks about writing a short email, and then it ends up being Hamlet. And we love it. Melinda is great, very intelligent. I want to point out she talked about strong female characters in the Star Wars galaxy, and they all hold honor positions in the incredibly rich universe. And then she says, even on a subliminal level, the positive impact females have in the Star Wars galaxy only helps show boys and girls, men and women, what is possible, what they can achieve. Real life has a way of emulating what appears on the silver screen. And Tricia, you hinted around to that quite a bit about how Star Wars and the female characters in it have influenced you and other people that you know as well.
Sure. I mean, some people, they're like, oh, Leia was it. And, obviously we had Mon Mothma and in the original trilogy, a statement to what it was in 1977 when that film came out. If you were a powerful woman, you were very much alone. So you didn't have other women standing around you in the workplace or, if you were going to be a leader. So I think she represented something. And for the people who were watching her then, it was impactful because if you had put her in a really balanced universe, I don't think people would have related to it as much because they were, they see her like they are standing up against something. But, the feminist movement as it was just starting to really gain traction. I wouldn't change that in the original trilogy because you
say would or wouldn't?
Wouldn't, no, because it stories tell who we were at a time too. It also tells our history.
And what do you think about the fact that Leia in A New Hope is a strong character? Yes, she needs to be rescued, but I mean, that's, again, people are allowed to be human and get into precarious situations. It was Darth Vader, for crying out loud. She takes charge. Melinda talks about this in her email too. She takes charge into the garbage chute flyboy. She doesn't wait around for them to decide. She dives right in. But then at the end, she, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, and it's interesting as people say she got captured. She chose to put herself out so that the droids could escape.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
So it's quite possible that she could have gotten away. In the Star Wars comics by Brian Wood really show her as a capable warrior. They're out now.
I was just going to bring that up. And you know what? You just actually illuminated my mind about her letting herself be captured. Thank you. That's awesome.
That was excellent.
That's good stuff.
I mean, it's the opening moment of the movie, and the scroll says Princess Leia is. The opening scroll is about Leia, and the first thing you see is her put the plans into the droid, and then she's shooting to draw their attention so that the droids can kind of hop along and get out of there. They're distracted. They want to catch her, and she's clever enough to go, the droids, nobody's going to suspect them.
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and that's what she does.
She did it purposefully, that she didn't necessarily intend to get captured, but she definitely put herself in that position to draw the attention away from the droids. So, and again,
if a guy does that, they get a medal.
Yeah, exactly. And, then they, obviously after that, it's all kind of cooperative.
I did jump over to your page there, Tricia, and man, I was just captivated by the excellent stuff. And
very cool.
I do want to put it out there to Del Rey, if they are looking for someone to write a book about Padme, contact Tricia. I mean,
I couldn't agree
excellent
more.
Excellent choice.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Hopefully that's in the works and she's just being modest and letting all the details go out, because that would be awesome.
You have to be published first before you can get into Star Wars. So, I'm working on my own thing, and then one day, Star Wars is almost intimidating. I don't know if I would want to write that. It's very,
J.J. Abrams used to say the same thing, and look how it's going for him.
Yeah.
So you could be the next J.J. Abrams, Tricia. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I want to kind of hit a few of these emails real quickly. So Brian, his main argument was the whole idea of Jabba, and maybe Tricia, that's why you brought that up earlier. Princess Leia, what I like about this, Tommy Mack hints around to this, Becca Benjamin talks about this quite a bit. The person that forces Leia to dress like slave Leia, she takes their life, in a very physical, brutal way. I mean, it's not like she's not malicious. She's not getting any pleasure out of it, but she takes back her power, so to speak. Another example of why she's a strong character.
Absolutely. I heard a statement made that the gender really wasn't an issue in Star Wars, that, we had strong female characters and strong male characters, but it is an issue. Jabba's kind of a sexist pig.
Oh, there's no kind of about it.
Yeah. It's funny because I don't think, to say gender isn't an issue, it's not true. Race is an issue in Star Wars, and so is speciesism.
It all is.
So, it's just a fictional universe. So he puts her in that situation, and anybody can relate to being victimized. Everybody's been victimized in their life some way. So what is good about Star Wars is that it shows that it is objectively wrong what he did. It's storytelling, and yes, she kills him, but that's the only way she's going to get out of the situation. It's not promoting that, if you're victimized, you need to kill the person, but
no.
It's making a point, which is this isn't the right thing
power.
to do. Yes.
Especially when you think about if you take a chain and make that sort of a metaphor for women being held back by oppression, you could certainly do a lot with that. And not to mention the fact that when you think about Jabba, I was thinking about this the other day too, because I'm an English teacher and I have too much time on my hands in the summertime. But everybody that Jabba tries to kill in the Rancor pit is like someone from one of the 7 deadly sins. Like you could say Ula was a victim maybe of lust, even though she wasn't pro-lust, but she was certainly portrayed that way, and she had to do what she had to do to survive, so Jabba kills her. And then when Luke goes down there, you could say he was a part of pride, and then once he sort of humbles himself and just uses a basic bone or something like that to get out of danger, I don't know. Another tangent.
No, I mean, I can totally see that. You have the keeper who's the bit of the sloth.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, Jabba is definitely, he's sort of, he is sort of sloth and lust and gluttony.
Yeah.
And, he's just sort of kind of everything in this huge, he's sort of perfect visually to just envision badness. He's greedy and, everything.
He's everything that you want in a nasty, which is also, he should have been kept that episode for, but that's a show for another time. I also wanted to say, one thing that Becca pointed out in her email, she talks a lot about, and you are definitely much more well read on the EU than we are. We are Padawans of the EU, probably.
Yes, yeah.
But she talks a lot about Padme being a strong, prominent figure in the Star Wars universe. And she says, yes, she fell in love against her better judgment, but like any other challenge or obstacle that crossed her path, she faces it head on. And then she talks about her giving the ultimate sacrifice for her children and the galaxy's best interests. A lot of people, after I saw Revenge of the Sith, now I wasn't a father, I wasn't even married at that time, but a good friend of mine, his wife said, I didn't believe the end of that. And I asked her why. She said, because she just had children. She just had twins. There's no way she would die of grief when she just had children. If she was a good mom, she would fight to stay alive to raise her kids. So, Tricia, what do you feel about that?
We actually talked about this. I hosted a panel on the female characters in Star Wars at Geek Girl Con last year, and I had Ashley Eckstein on it from her universe and the voice of Ahsoka Tano.
Of course.
And one of the other panelists is one of my bloggers, Linda Hansen-Raj, and she's a mother. I do not have children. I have many pets. But she said the same thing, and her point was when she brought it up, because Padme, that moment sort of was brought up by someone on the panel, and she said she couldn't relate to it either, that she couldn't relate to that moment, that she wouldn't have given up. So it's certainly something that, you have to consider. And that's why I still am of the mind that I don't think it was really a choice. I think that, she died after the twins were out of her body. And I still think there's a mystical, I don't think she chose to just go, I'm going to leave my kids here.
Yeah,
I think she held on longer than probably she should have been able to. So that's how I choose to see it. And the great thing about Star Wars is you can come at it the other way. It's always interesting as a storyteller to see how people react. And it's a fair reaction to say, as a mother, I don't think that would happen. What, Linda's point is, she says, I would move heaven and earth to stay with my children. But then,
Well, that's where you bring in verisimilitude, where you take semblance of truth in fiction and mythology. And it's a very mythological concept, a very mythological construct for the parents to die and the children have to fight to find their own way, to find their own path in the universe. So, from a story point of view, I thought it was beautiful and poignant. I want to point out something that Tommy Mack said, and this was his argument for the end. If she had to die for the story, she should have died fighting to the last breath. And maybe this is just me, but Anakin Vader should have actually killed her not just choked her to unconsciousness and then she dies of overwhelming sadness. Personally, I think that Anakin, Vader, whether you want to say inadvertently or not, he definitely did kill her.
There was concept art of Padme with a dagger on her costume when she went to face Anakin, and they removed that. And
to Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah. Yes. I think that you have to remember that Padme's not, a pacifist in that she won't fight for something, but at the same time, she would want to argue her case first. And Obi-Wan showing up didn't allow her to say what she wanted to say. And then, Anakin, choke Vader's her.
That's awesome.
There's a meme in that.
Yeah. And then,
there you go.
And then she doesn't get to argue her points. So, Padme's way never gets a chance. And the irony, the tragic irony is that Obi-Wan's coming out and exposing himself cuts off Padme's chance to do that. It's not that he was trying to make her fail. He takes
the agency from her.
Well, but not really. But
you don't think so?
No,
not on purpose.
What he does is he thinks in his mind, in his worldview, he's not belittling Padme. She's a pregnant woman who's trying to change a Sith Lord, and Obi-Wan has Obi-Wan has seen the footage and knows the truth. True. Padme's only heard it and wants to see for herself. Mm-hmm. So Obi-Wan in his mind, it's the urgency is to, and that's the beauty of storytelling is the tragic moments that that could have happened. What if he had given Padme the chance? But everything in his understanding of the world and of the Sith suggested urgency, and a lightsaber needed to be dealt with Anakin.
True. And okay, let me retract my statement. I don't mean that he literally consciously or anything took away her agency, but just his very appearance kind of amps up the testosterone for Anakin anyway. Plus the fact that he's now a murderer, a mass murderer, so that doesn't help matters of any way.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's also insane. I mean, at that point...
yeah, he is. His eyes are yellow.
Well, not only that, but he's killed younglings. He's killed numerous people by that point, too, like you mentioned. And it's like, that screws you up.
Yeah, he's rationalized himself into... Which I love fall. I actually love the fall of characters because it's good intentions gone the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, this is the famous thing. Everyone who's evil doesn't think they're doing evil. They think this is the right thing. I got to push my agenda on everybody.
Yeah, I like characters that are evil for the sake of being evil. I think you need those too. Like, that. But Anakin has rationalized himself into doing, horrible things. Mm-hmm. He cuts down literally all his brothers in arms and Jedi kids. So,
he's the most fascinating, complex character in the entire thing, I think, easily.
Yeah. And I think the Clone Wars did a good job of making it even more like, oh, wow.
Because you actually care about him now. If you ever feel like mentioning to all of your friends that they should come on Coffee with Kenobi and talk about this stuff, like Ashley or James Arnold Taylor or anybody, feel free to spread the word. We'd be okay with that.
All the Star Wars people, James Arnold Taylor is such an amazing, positive person. Every time I see his stage show, Obi-Wan and Me, mm-hmm. I cry every time because it's just so inspirational.
He's so insanely talented and, like you said, positive. Just look at everything he tweets or puts on Facebook. It's very uplifting.
Well, I mean, he actually lost his voice he got sick.
Did?
Yeah. And the Obi-Wan and Me sort of tells the story, and the day that he got into some toxic mold in his house, and that was also the day that his daughter was born that he adopted. So it's but he had to, he's a voice actor without his voice, and he kind of had to change everything about himself. It's a really,
I've got to see that.
I know there's Obi-Wan and Me, go on YouTube. You can find it. And it's like a 20-minute stage show. He does, he's done it done it a Disney person. Have you not been to Star Wars Weekends?
I've been to Star Wars Weekends a lot, but when I went, he wasn't hosting that year. It was Filoni and Ashley. He wasn't there then.
Oh, okay. Well, if you ever go and he does that stage show, definitely go see it. It's usually in the evenings. And if you ever go, let me know, because I go at least 2 times to up there because I'm in South Florida. So
cool.
Yeah. So I love it, but definitely something worth watching the video. I know there's YouTube videos of it.
Oh, I would love to see that. He's awesome. Okay, well, I guess we've hit the emails pretty well. There's a lot more we could do, and there's just a few things we're going to have each of our guests answer. Just a couple quick questions for you, Tricia, before we send you on your way. I'm sure your coffee's almost empty anyway, or needs to be warmed up.
The tea.
Yeah. Oh, you had tea.
Oh,
I'm a mocha guy. I had a mocha. Corey, what'd you have? I couldn't tell.
I had cough medicine, so.
Oh, that's right. I saw it. Okay, here's our questions. What is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Empire Strikes Back.
Hi, girl. Your favorite character?
Do I have to pick from the movies?
Let's do both.
Okay, books, Jaina Solo, without a doubt. The movies, I don't know. It's a toss-up between Obi-Wan and Princess Leia, really.
What's your favorite line of dialogue from a film moment?
I love you, I know.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good choice. Good choice.
If you do collect, do you have a special or favorite collectible that you own?
New favorite is my Jaina Bashuju, which just came out, and I know they're sold out. She's in the X-Wing costume, and some of my other favorites are the character keys from the older Clone Wars, the micro series. So I have
the Gandhi.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Gandhi.
All right, last one. That's cool. What particular message or themes about the Star Wars saga resonate or speak to you?
The theme that resonates for me, and I think is very important going forward, is hope. That there's always hope, and that good will conquer evil in the end because of that.
Oh, that's cool. Well, thank you, Tricia, so very much for having a cup of coffee with us, and we look forward to chatting with you in the future. You have a great night.
You too.
All right,
thanks.
Take care.
Bye. Tricia. Bye.
My Jedi training didn't prepare me for this.
Our show topic for show number 5 is the expanding universe and canon. Are you an expanding universe person? Why or why not? What about canon in general? How important is it? Why is it important? Should it be important?
This comes up every single show that we've done so far, and then talking to Tricia and other fans who love the expanding universe. I've read a lot more expanding universe stuff since we started doing this podcast. Corey and I talk about it a lot. We're very excited about the Kenobi book. So we need to talk about the expanded universe and its role in the Star Wars universe and fandom. So send us your email, suggestions, and your comments and your thoughts on this to feedback@coffeewithkenobi.com, and we will discuss them on the next show.
I like the sound of that.
Echo 3 to Echo 7. Ano, buddy, do you read me? I saw part of the message.
I seem to have found it.
Our first email comes from Aaron Harrison. It was a little bit late as far as the discussion we just had with Tricia. We'd like to go ahead and read it. He states, Gentlemen, again, I can't praise you enough for a phenomenal job you're both doing with Coffee with Kenobi. It's quickly becoming a staple in my Star Wars fandom. Thank you. Now for the topic of this episode, women's roles in Star Wars. Another interesting topic to tackle. It's my belief without women, there would be no Star Wars. Women play, and I wholeheartedly believe always will play one of the most interesting and important roles in Star Wars. Whether as primary characters or secondary, their importance doesn't go unnoticed. Without Shmi, no Anakin. Padme started as a queen and has become a senator in the Galactic Senate. Ahsoka Tano, who has not only influenced Anakin to grow beyond being the hotshot Jedi he was, but to being a teacher, but outside of Star Wars, opening up the saga to a new generation of fanboys and fangirls. Without the loss of Shmi and eventually Ahsoka, Anakin would have felt no fear in losing Padme, which means no fall to the dark side. Without Leia, Luke would have never sought out Obi-Wan, never left Tatooine, never joined the Rebels, blown up the Death Star, and helped complete the redemption of Anakin. And there are so many more I could go on about, but it's too late and the podcast is only so long. Take a moment to scroll through StarWars.com and look at all the women listed amongst the characters. Not a weak one in the bunch. I'm wearing this on my daughter's 6th birthday. Happy birthday. And as she gets older, I want her to have role models that I believe will make her stronger, motivated, and ambitious to fight for what she believes. The women of Star Wars provide that, and I'm proud of that. The women of Star Wars give me another connecting point with my daughter, which I value more and more each day. And with more movies and TV shows coming, I'm sure women will keep their prominent spot in the saga. God bless, and may the Force be with you always, Aaron Harris. Well, Aaron, definitely some great insight there, and again, happy birthday to your daughter.
Yes, happy birthday.
We definitely agree with you in all this, and you make some great points of, Shmi didn't, release Anakin to the Jedis, that obviously they wouldn't come to be as far as, his journey as a Jedi, having Ahsoka Tano and courting Padme and obviously falling in love with her. If those women weren't involved in Anakin's life, there would be no story to tell.
And what I think is interesting about Aaron's email, we had to include Aaron's email, even though we didn't get it in time for Tricia's interview, because he's a good friend of the show. He's been very supportive since day one, and we appreciate that. I really like how he points out the fact that women are like guiding lights, and not necessarily muses, but inspirational points. And basically, without women, the men would have no direction, no focus. And that's pretty much what the real world is like. I think that's pretty safe to say. And I also really like the fact that he talks about his daughter and the fact that she is inspired by some of the women in Star Wars, and it's a connecting point for him with his daughter. I've never read Vader's Little Princess. As I mentioned before, I've read Vader and Son, but I just love the idea. Mike Pilot and his daughter have a really great relationship, and Star Wars is a fun part of that as well. So, excellent work, Aaron. Our next email is from Tommy Mack. And Tommy Mack is another great friend of the show, and this is a long email. It is indeed a doozy, but we're going to read it because Tommy Mack is one of our guys. How cool it is after a long, stressful day of work to come home, put on my Star Wars pajamas, and chill with a nice piping cup of coffee with Kenobi. Some show commentary as I go on listening to episode 3, and I'm going to throw in my little editorial here because as he was listening to it, he was sending us random stuff on Facebook, so it was pretty fun, so I pieced them all together. The first thing he said was, "Thank you for not spending a ton of time on useless episode 7 rumors. If something comes along worth talking about, by all means. But why waste time talking about something obviously false, rumors, or stuff that isn't even close to coming from an official source? Number 2, you're not seriously considering buying your infant son a plush Rancor, are you? You're braver than I thought. No, definitely not a Rancor. I got him a Tauntaun, and it's super cute. It's awesome. I sent a little picture of it to Concetta Parker, and it's a lot of fun. We're going to use it as one of our things to indicate how much he has grown. And when I say we, I mean me, because I'm sure that my wife just thinks that thing is weird looking, but it's okay.
I wonder if your son's diapers will smell worse than they smell on the inside.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Number 3, attachments, and specifically in regards to Anakin Skywalker. Anakin was taken too late in life, according to the Jedi. Ideally, he should have been taken at infancy. The Jedi went against their better judgment training Anakin because of their prophecy, which never had fully explained to us, and in the end it was a disaster. That being said, Anakin was not solely responsible for the downfall of the Jedi Order. Instead, one could make the argument that it was their attachment to outdated methods in their dogma. They were blinded to the machinations of Palpatine long before they found Anakin Skywalker. Oh, I like that. Comparing the Jedi Order to religion is an obvious comparison and a tough one to do without stepping on the toes of those with faith. I think most people would agree, however, that while there are many, many good, loving things that can come from and be based on a system of faith and belief in a higher power, there is always a constant danger of becoming overly adherent to any particular dogma or belief system to the point where it becomes a detriment to society instead of a benefit. The Jedi had good intent, but became overly dogmatic in their views, trusting the Force despite the fact it was obvious they were blind in many areas and allowing themselves, no matter how noble their intent, to lead down the path to their own eventual destruction and the downfall of the Republic. In regards to Rebecca Benjamin's comments about the Jedi Order and their fear of Anakin, my thought is, perhaps the reason they ultimately brought him into the Jedi Order was not out of this idea that this child destined to deserve to become a Jedi, but because it was their fear of what this child could become without their supervision. Too old and much fear in you, this is what they told Anakin, and yet they trained him anyway, because they were afraid if they didn't keep a type rein on him, he could become a strong force against them. And in their arrogance, and they were arrogant, it was apparent throughout the prequels, they thought they could lock up his emotions and turn him into what they wanted him to be. Looks like that strategy backfired on them, didn't it? 5. Bringing balance to the Force. This could certainly be another show topic. Quick thoughts on it. Balance implies equality, half and half. The Jedi, however, seem to feel bringing balance to the Force somehow means the eradication of the dark side and only the light side being in play. Obviously, they were very, very strong. What may be totally fascinating to see is where J.J. Abrams might go with this idea, as we finally pick up after Return of the Jedi and the downfall of the Sith. Yes, the bad guys have been beaten, but does that mean the balance has finally been brought to the Force? Obviously, we're going to need some bad guys in episodes 7, 8, and 9, so my thoughts are the Sith somehow survive, or at the very least, there are Darksiders still out there for Luke and company to contend with. Because in the end, Star Wars follows that most basic of mythologies, the classic story of good versus evil. Number 6. And he also plugs a little thing, LOL. Dan, you just made the same comment about if the light side takes over, is that really balanced? Well, this could be a very long-winded topic. And I think another commentary, Corey, this will probably be a good one to put in the next couple of months or so. It's pretty interesting. Number 6, divide and conquer. Palpatine's genius in converting Anakin was, yes, he divided him from the Jedi, but in such a covert way. Note how and when Palpatine finally revealed himself. He had established himself as a caring father figure to Anakin, and also openly established that he both knew and approved of Anakin's relationship with Padme. He also had established that the Jedi did not only trust him, Palpatine, but did not trust Anakin either. Yet at the same time, we're using Anakin against Palpatine, making him a spy, despite the fact that this went against what the Order supposedly stood for. In short, Palpatine didn't so much play the Sith against the Jedi as he played the Jedi against one of their own. Number 7, the expanded universe and how it plays into these topics. I think you guys could view it this way. The EU, essentially, certain fans' point of view on where it goes from the end of Return of the Jedi. Hence the word expanded. When it comes to topics like attachment or the rules of the Jedi Order or balance of the Force, whatever's been covered in an EU novel is basically the writings of a fan, fleshing that particular topic out based on what came from the films. Whether us, other non-author fans, agree or disagree can be a matter for open discussion, of course, since the books are not canon. This again is what truly excites me about episodes 7, 8, and 9, as while J.J. Abrams has taken the helm, the story will still be based on the treatments by George Lucas, so we can finally see what the maker saw in all this truly may be. Number 8, back to balance of the Force for a moment. You guys brought up the comment about emotions and how Palpatine manipulated Anakin in regards to Padme, Shmi, and Ahsoka, as well as the top limb to the dark side. Perhaps it's bringing balance to the Force is allegorical for finding balance emotionally. Think about it. The Jedi more or less spurned emotional attachment, shunning especially the concept of love as it applies to the bonds we form with family and friends. The Sith, however, reveled in their emotions, but took it to the extremes. While they might claim a love or a passion for such things as the arts or objects to own, what they truly reveled in was one emotion: hate. He also points out in the parentheses that Palpatine has lush apartments and fancy outfits, which definitely ties into that. Yeah. Having no emotions is bad enough, but to focus on only that one negative is far worse. Luke found the balance, ultimately embracing his emotions, but not allowing the negative ones to get the better of him. Is there a dark side to the Force, or is it essentially how one chooses to use it? If we compare Anakin versus Luke, one can make the argument that both of them were ruled by their emotions, but it was essentially how they chose to deal with those emotions raging inside them that decided their fates. And as far as good versus evil, ultimately that's the basic mythology that drives the best of stories, isn't it? And the best ones are where we do not have good versus evil, but strongly defined characters we can identify with and understand their motives, good or bad, if not agree with their actions. Until episode 4, may the Force be with you. Tommy, excellent, insightful email. You could easily be a future co-host of Coffee with Kenobi with insights like that. We love it. The main thing, I'm sure there's a lot that Corey wants to talk about. The main thing I want to point out, this whole thing about bringing balance to the Force, I was thinking a lot about that. One of the things we do when we put these shows together, we edit them and listen to them a couple of times before we release them. Try to get them exactly how we hope that they will sound the best. And Corey, let me give some on-the-air props to Corey because he's done a fantastic job with that. So thank you, Corey. But I think... Absolutely. I think the thing with balance in the Force is not that they have to eradicate dark, but because the Emperor is so strong that the darkness eclipses the light. And when they get rid of the Emperor, now there's some bad and there's some good in the world, but it's more on an even playing field. I think Palpatine was just an emotional, strong, intense force of evil that there was no balance because there was so much more dark than light, and now it's on an even playing field.
Also, you gotta remember, too, it's after Order 66, and basically, there's no Jedis. I mean, there's no good. Aside from the rebels, obviously fighting against the Empire, looking to, take an iron grip on the universe, there's more evil at that point than there is good.
Exactly.
I mean, this is a huge topic, and we'd love to do something like this for a future episode.
Definitely. Stay tuned, for sure.
Our next email comes from James Howlett. He posted on the Coffee with Kenobi Facebook timeline. Definitely check that out. He says, the first 3 Star Wars movies are called the original trilogy, the OT, and the episodes 1 through 3 are the prequel trilogy, PT. Can we just go ahead and refer to those new movies as the sequel trilogy, ST? Then when they announce 3 more movies after that, we can call these the threequel trilogy, TT. Definitely something to think about. I mean, I know we definitely call it the original trilogy as 4, 5, and 6, and prequels are always, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, definitely. I think we can call these a sequel trilogy. It's going to be a trilogy.
Yeah, I've heard people refer to it as a sequel trilogy, and then James, who we know from GHG and a lot of other fun things, he's a clever fellow, so thank you, James, for your email. Our next email comes from Troy Metzler, and this is a good time to announce that Troy Metzler has graciously agreed to be our San Diego Comic-Con official reporter for Coffee with Kenobi, so we look forward to hearing from him on our next show. Troy wrote, "This being my Comic-Con 10th anniversary, I might shed some light on the whole idea of the Star Wars presence at Comic-Con. Star Wars excitement at San Diego Comic-Con was seriously diminished after we found out the title of Episode 3. There was no big rush for Clone Wars, so Star Wars kind of fizzled out over the past few years. Friday was always Star Wars Day with some big Hall H presentation. Nothing in the galaxy gets Hall H anymore. I'm sure next year that will change due to 2015 being a big year for us fans. Looking at the schedule for 2013, Friday is still Star Wars Day, but nothing big. There's the usual Hasbro EFX and other product updates. I did see this, but there's a Geek Star Wars Roundtable Live. Sense a great disturbance in the Force. Don't worry, it's only the cover story of Geek Magazine coming to the stage at the San Diego Comic-Con, as panelists convene their own Jedi Council roundtable to discuss their new hopes for the saga and the astounding developments in a galaxy far, far away. Kyle Newman, director of Fanboys, Steve Melching, writer of The Clone Wars, Christian Gossett, artist of Tales of the Jedi, Jonathan Rinsler, author of The Making of Return of the Jedi, and the Geek founding publisher and Sith Lord, Mark A. Altman, writer-producer of Free Enterprise, discuss the return of Han, Luke, and Leia, the prequels, the end of the Clone Wars, and J.J. Abrams' epic challenge as Star Wars Strikes Back. And I actually have that Geek magazine. I got that a couple of weeks ago. They talk a lot about what they want to see from the movies, and Kyle Newman is a very well-established and very knowledgeable Star Wars fan and defender of the prequels. So that would be a good panel to go to. I'm looking forward to seeing what Troy discovers, and I'm hoping that he finds some really cool collectibles as well.
Absolutely. We can't thank Troy enough for doing this on our behalf, and I can't wait till I hear all the kinds of news coming out of there, especially the rumors and just the whole essence of the feeling of the day. And obviously the presentations will be big. I'd love to see definitely something come out for Episode 7, but we'll have to wait and see. And I still think, we talked about this earlier, but I still expect at Comic-Con not to hear much. I think at Celebration Europe we're going to see a lot about Star Wars Rebels, maybe a hint or two about Episode 7, but I think most of the Episode 7 news, if there is anything that they're ready to release, will probably be at the D23 Expo. What about you? You're probably right. It'd be more of a Disney thing. They're going to really shroud this stuff in mystery, and I'd say they're going to focus on the animated Rebels show coming up and really push that and show a lot off that, which that's going to be great too. But as far as Episode 7 stuff goes, yeah, I think they're really going to hold off on it. We're not going to have any major news. Like, there was actually a news article last week. We probably could have talked about this in the news section, but it doesn't seem like news. And the news was basically that Star Wars is expected to make $1.2 billion when Episode 7 comes out. In other news, the sun comes out during the daytime. I mean, that's how insightful that was. Talk about desperately trying to put Star Wars into your news segments. Come on. Our next email comes from Joe from the Cantina Cast, which they've graciously asked us to join them on their next episode of the Cantina Cast. We really look forward to their discussion there. I think the discussion topic will be Ewan McGregor versus Alec Guinness, who is the better Obi-Wan. Yeah, it's just going to be everything about Obi-Wan Kenobi and just anything Star Wars that we're talking about. We are really excited that Joe and Mike asked us to be a part of their show, so the four of us getting our heads together chatting about Star Wars is going to be awesome. So be sure to download that when that comes out. We will certainly announce that for you on our Twitter and Facebook feeds. But back to Joe's email. Hey guys, Joe from the Cantina Cast here, and I wanted to touch on two things you brought up on your third show. Firstly, you asked the question of whether you should sort of ignore the EU when going into the deep discussions of Star Wars. I think this is purely a personal choice. Mike and I struggle with this on nearly every episode because it is all out there and very hard to ignore. Without having read as much as many of the EU fans, it's hard to talk intelligently about it on a consistent basis. George Lucas has said the novels are not his stories. Has he had input on them? Yes, he has said that you can't kill Luke, Han, Leia, too many authors who have written pro-fix. The problem is there's a lot of EU fans out there that love the books, maybe even more than the movies. I've seen these people firsthand being a member of the Star Wars fanfic community for several years. I even met my wife through Star Wars fanfic, so there can be a lot of hurt feelings when people say EU isn't canon. But George is really the one who confirms it, no matter how much people want to forget that. As far as women representation in Star Wars, I think the few we have are strongly represented. Leia is arguably the strongest character in all the movies in intelligence, morals, and bravery. There has also been many rumors of female lead characters in the sequel trilogy. Of course, I'm a big supporter of this, both because my wife and I have had the privilege of knowing and meeting Tricia Barr and Ashley Eckstein and everything they represent in the Star Wars community. So I believe with the female characters we have been presented in the past, they are very strong and well done. Do we have enough female characters? No, but we have several more movies on the way that can rectify this situation. And thanks a lot, Joe, and definitely check out the Cantina Cast. They're a great podcast, and they promote all kinds of great stuff and great discussions just like ours. I think, as we spoke before about the female perspective of the female characters in Star Wars, there are a lot, and we shouldn't, neglect the EU as far as these characters, because you're right, there are two different fan bases, and we don't want any bad blood between both sides, and we definitely, want to give respect to each side.
And that's exactly why our topic for show number 5 is going to be about the expanded universe and canon. So Joe's email is actually really timely and helped to inspire our topic for the next show. And as Corey mentioned earlier, we can't wait to discuss it with you guys for your next Cantina Cast. And then later on Coffee with Kenobi, show number 5. We are happy to announce the winner of our very first contest, as a lot of you saw on Facebook and Twitter, and we talked about this. Actually, I want to apologize to our listeners. Last show at the beginning, we talked about announcing our first contest and talking about it, and then we never talked about it on the show. So if you're one of our loyal Facebook or Twitter followers, you know that you had to go onto iTunes and write a review. Didn't have to be positive or negative. We just wanted you to write a review on the show, because every time you write a review for our show on iTunes, it helps the show. It helps us to get put on the main podcasting page and to get more attention. So what we want to do is for people to write those reviews, and the winner is going to get a free Coffee with Kenobi t-shirt. We're actually going to put in some orders for that very soon. So whether you want a t-shirt or not, if you're interested in one, please email us at feedback@coffeewithkenobi.com. Send us your size, and we'll go ahead and get one for you and let you know how much those are going to run. The more people that order, the cheaper each shirt will be. So we're very excited. So earlier today, we put all of the names into a hat, into my Star Wars baseball hat that I got from Disney Star Wars Weekends a few years ago. And my son Parker drew out the winner, T.A. Harris, 121079. Congratulations, T.A. Harris, 121079. You have won the free t-shirt. Hooray!
Confetti.
So confetti, yeah, it's in the studios right now. So go ahead and email us, T.A. Harris, 121079, and let us know who you are, and we will get that t-shirt out to you. Thank you so much to everybody who participated, and don't forget to write a review for us on iTunes. If you would like to respond to our question of the show, have a comment, or just want to say hello, send us an email at feedback@coffeewithkenobi.com. Or, if you have a specific question or comment for either of us individually, email us at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com or coryc@coffeewithkenobi.com, or visit us at coffeewithkenobi.com and click on the comments section. If you enjoy the show, please write a review on iTunes. You can also like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, as well as keep up to date at our Twitter feed at twitter.com/coffeewithkenobi. If you enjoy the jazz music, download the album Eye to Eye by C. Torok on iTunes.
Give the evacuation code signal.
That's it for show number 4 of Coffee with Kenobi. A huge thank you to Tricia Barr for being our first guest and for graciously giving her time and talents to discuss our topic of the role of women in the Star Wars universe. Be sure to check out her excellent site, fangirlblog.com. Another big thank you to Mark Newbold from Jedi News UK for coming on and letting us know about the Caravan of the Force. Be sure to go to our website and click on Caravan of Force logo to donate to this important cause. Thank you to everyone who contributed to the show this week and all of you out there who listen to our show. Don't forget to send us your comments and opinions on the topic for show number 5, the expanding universe and the importance of canon in the Star Wars universe. This is the podcast you're looking for. This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Ltd. and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at starwars.com. Star Wars. All names and sounds and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
There's no one here. Move along. Move along.